Now what's amazing is this entire wall you're looking at has been shaped. This is bedrock. You see the angle that way, and we have Yusuf here as our guide, but also giving us the human perspective of the scale of what we're looking at. This is not a typical thing that tourists are allowed to see, but we have been granted allowance because Yusuf is a guide from this area. Yeah. No, I understand the right. Yeah, and that's hardly something that the dynastic Egyptians started and stopped. This is something before them. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what we see in Peru too. It's like it was molded, not hacked out of. No, there's a lot of this kind of stuff, yeah, that we see. And most likely the same kind of time period, counter to the claims of most archaeologists. We think we're looking at pre-end of the Ice Age. And why is that? Because the end of the Ice Age was much more of a traumatic event than most people realize. It was not this gentle melting of the poles, but a lot of science is telling us that the Ice Age could have taken, or the end of the Ice Age could have taken less than 3 years for its major effect to happen, and that means raising of sea levels by 350 feet globally. From that, possibly destabilization of the Earth, and therefore a change in its axis from 0 to 23.5 degrees. Global catastrophic event which would have wiped out the majority of humanity as well as their knowledge. Look up Dr. Robert Schoch and Barbara Hand Clow as two excellent authors on the subject of the end of the Ice Age.
So here we see some of the most ancient writings, because this kind of writings doesn't have any phonetic complements or transliteration symbols. The writings say Wisir Ab Kha Ifra. This is Kha Ifra, where the word Kafrin came from. Kha is a stage of the sun to rise, and we can see this as half disk rising, and then the other half circle here is the beams coming out of it. This is the stage Kha. If means 4 or 2, the rising of Ra, the disk of the sun. Wisir, they call it Usir, but it's the right noun for it is Wisir. Wisir Eb means the strong heart or the strong pulse.
So here in the neighborhood of the Great Pyramid and the Second Pyramid is this very interesting trench that I believe most or some Egyptologists believe was a boat pit or something like that. What's very curious is this strange blackish, reddish, yellowy material. It looks very iron-like. And we're finding it in, here it is in a seam here it is there, and here again in a bedrock limestone base. So the question is that material natural, or was it a byproduct of some ancient process? So a sample, hopefully at some point, will be sent to scientists in the U.S. in order to find out.
You can see here some of the white calcite stone in the ground.
Oh yeah.
Aligned also with the water channel. Very similar to what we saw in Abu Sir.
Right.
Part of the dynamics is still left. Part of the dynamic of the complex is still left through these water channels, the crystal, and of course the other types of stones. How all the complexes need to be made in two, like this, like two polarities, two sides, with two entrances. from the side as well.
Oh, wow. And the magnitude of some of these limestone blocks, I'm going to walk it through. This is about 7 feet tall. Starts here, and I'm going to take about 1 yard steps as I go through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And originally, yeah.
So this piece is between 10 and 12 meters at least.
Oh, yeah.
And like 2 meters high.
Right.
And like 1.5 meter deep.
That's amazing.
You do the math.
Yeah.
How many bulls you need to drag these? How many men you need to cut this piece out of its original location and drag it all the way, if you're going to drag it all the way here, and then bring it above the mound just to add 1 block to the complex.
Yeah.
This is a challenge. Just 1 block is a challenge to accomplish how they did it.
Right.
So what about the rest of the building?
Not to mention this little thing in the background here. Again, more of the casing stone from Aswan, 500 miles away. In the shadow of the Great Pyramid, so-called Khafre Pyramid, there are these little satellite pyramids, and here you can see the casing stone is still on the very bottom of this one. Very fine limestone without mortar. And the knobs, the curious knobs that are in a lot of constructions in pre-Inca Cusco. And we've seen examples of them here in rose granite in some cases. But here they're projections out from this, well, especially here at the bottom. These beautiful, beautiful shaped knob-like projections. Oop. And again, what would their function have been? In Peru, the conventional story is that they were used as assists in lifting the stone, because you could rope or take a rope and put it around the bottom like that to help you lift the stone up. But this one isn't really that huge. This one has 1, and then why does this one have 2? And if they were used for lifting, then why aren't they at the balance points? This one's at the end, that one's part way in. And this one's off to the right-hand side. So the other possible reasoning behind it could have something to do with energy. If we think of these buildings as being ancient energy generators prior to the existence of the pharaohs, then the knobs could have something to do with the energy control or production or some other related energetic function. This gives us a stellar example of what the casing stone looked like on one of the little pyramids on the Giza Plateau. Very tight-fitting, eroded joints, but originally it looks like you couldn't have fit a knife, a razor blade, or maybe even a human hair in between the cracks in some places. But the trouble is the erosion does make the join not as perfect looking as it would have been when it was originally made. But you see the beautiful smoothness of the surface here. And luckily on this one too. This is another one of the baby pyramids. And again you see the beautiful workmanship in the shadow of the Great Pyramid. And here again. So imagine how gleaming white these would have been at their time of construction. And here in the background, that really god-awful modern building is where they house one of the ships of the pharaohs. But talk about that as compared to that. If that's what modern society is compared to ancient society.
This is more than 100.
Absolutely.
So leaving the Great Pyramid behind, Cairo in the background, and heading towards the second pyramid, Khafre, so-called.
Below are pavement stones. This was purposely laid to level the plateau. So this is artificial stone, everything you see. Look at some of these blocks. Hakim would point to one 30 feet long rectangle weighing 200 tons. Some of these stones, so you understand, before they built anything up, they leveled the plateau by putting, these is all artificial construction. And what you're seeing along the line, you'll see holes. Sometimes you'll see square holes. Sometimes you'll see round holes. They originally were open to the tunnels underneath to solar energy to heat the water. According to Abdel Hakim, water is the source of the energy of the pyramids. Water. Breaking the bond from hydrogen and oxygen and water releases a tremendous amount of energy. And as you see, as Yusuf explained coming up, the lower courses of this pyramid were encased in this rose granite. All of this that's come off were the lower courses. So, did they quarry this? Of course not. They didn't take this granite. This is evidence of the cataclysm. Direct evidence of the cataclysm.
So this is the second pyramid, commonly called the Khafre pyramid, the one in the middle. You can see the casing stones are still on the upper courses there. The first 5 courses on the bottom were rose granite. The rest of it was limestone. And then this is the little one, Menkaure. And the Great Pyramid, so-called Great Pyramid of Khufu, is in behind here. And what's possibly especially important for us who have been looking at Peruvian things is to look and see some knobs in the outer casing of the Menkaure pyramid here. It'll be interesting to see if they bear any resemblance to the ones that we've been looking at in Peru. So here at the Menkaure pyramid, the casing stone, which is red granite from Aswan, brought 500 miles from the quarry. It's about at least 2 feet thick, so it's not like a thin veneer layer. It's at least 2 feet thick. Again, there's Khafre pyramid in the background. A lot of knobs on these stones on the outside, very similar to what we see in Peru. And the indigenous story is similar, again, to what we find in Peru. And that is that the knobs there were for the tuning of the wall, because this wasn't simply a functional thing. If this and these were indeed ancient power plants and vibratory structures, then it kind of makes sense that you would have to tune the exterior in order to achieve the vibration or harmonic that you were after. At least that is a more, I think, logical explanation than the idea that those knobs were there to help lift the stones, because a lot of the biggest ones don't have any knobs on. And then it's on this side we see the little pyramids. So you can see that with this baby pyramid too, there are the casing stones, 2 still intact. One of them has a knob on it, so if the knob was for lifting, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And there you see how the pyramid was stripped. This side was completely stripped of its original granite, used as construction material for much later buildings, possibly during the Roman times. You can clearly see how the entire exterior of granite has been stripped off one of these baby pyramids. Again, the Khafre one here.
Oh no, I'm not doing it.
And the whole area is strewn with the remains of cannibalization of an ancient structure in ancient areas by later people. And before you say, oh my God, isn't that awful, how could they do this? Remember, these buildings are a minimum of around 4,000 years old and could be much older. Over that period of time, cultures come, cultures go, and especially later cultures who arrive and have no comprehension as to the significance of the original constructions. They look at these things as simply quarries. You don't only find that in Egypt, you find that in Peru and throughout the Middle East, I'm sure, and many places in the world.